Early immigrants to the American colonies were motivated largely by the desire to worship freely in their own fashion, particularly after the English Civil War. Many were looking to establish a Christian settlement or Christian nation if possible. This desire is expressed in the Mayflower Compact dated November the 21st, 1620. The very first sentence reads, "Having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith and honor of our King and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia." There were no Muslim settlers, Hindus, or Buddhists upon the Mayflower, or any of the subsequent settler ships packed with people sailing to our shores. Mostly, if they claimed any religion at all, they were Christians. It is also a fact of American history that most of the original colonies had a test act, or a distinctly Judeo-Christian religious requirement in order to hold public office, and several states retained them for a short while. For example, the Pennsylvania Constitution of 1776 provided that each member, before he took his seat, should make and subscribe the following declaration: "I do believe in one God, the Creator and Governor of the universe, the rewarder of the good and the punisher of the wicked, and I do acknowledge the Scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration." But with these test acts, the civil rights of atheists or people of other religions were not protected by this Pennsylvania Constitution and others like it. In response to these test acts, Article 6 of the United States Constitution provides that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. All such test acts were eventually found unconstitutional under the ideals of the First Amendment. That is, we were not trying to become a Christian nation exclusively, lest we fall into the trap similar to the European domination by the Roman Catholic Church and other national religions. But, nonetheless, it cannot be denied that there was a consensus among the colonies and the early states that Christianity was the ideal upon which our nation was being founded. Not any other religion, not any other ideal. The United States Declaration of Independence was a statement adopted by the Continental Congress on July 4, 1776, announcing that the 13 American colonies, which were already then at war with Great Britain for over a year, were no longer a part of the British Empire. This document was written primarily by Thomas Jefferson. For years, the British Empire levied heavy taxes upon the colonies. The colonies, although they had their own legislatures, had no representation in Parliament. Acts of rebellion soon commenced, such as the now famous Boston Tea Party. No taxation without representation was the mantra heard throughout the colonies. Another historical fact of this time is that slavery was not the product of, nor was it an evil introduced by the Founding Fathers. Slavery was introduced in America nearly 200 years before the Founders. In fact, the first Supreme Court Chief Justice, John Jay, noted that there had been few serious efforts to dismantle the institution of slavery prior to the Founding Fathers. But the Revolution was a turning point in the national attitude against slavery, and it was the Founders who contributed greatly to that change. In fact, one of the reasons given by Thomas Jefferson for the separation from Great Britain was a desire to rid America of the evil of slavery imposed upon them by the British government. This is the very reason that in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson would pen these words, "All men are created equal." In 1775, most colonists still hoped for reconciliation with Great Britain. When the Second Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia in May 1775, some delegates hoped for eventual independence. In late 1775, the King of Great Britain rejected Congress's second petition and issued a proclamation of rebellion against the colonies. Movement towards declaring independence now became a reality, especially after the publication of Thomas Paine's enormously popular pamphlet entitled Common Sense, on January the 10th, 1776, in which he introduced the idea of a constitutional republic, or as he called it, republicanism. 56 men, delegates to the Continental Congress, our Founding Fathers, agreed with the words in the Declaration, including the words about our Creator and the equality of all men. And they agreed with the last sentence. and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. 56 men pledged their lives, fortunes, and honor, counting on help from God, as they signed it, and thus the concept of America was born, not by atheists or deists, not upon the ideals of secularism, or one of the many religions of the world, but by men who were putting their lives in the hand of God, the God of the Bible, and praying for a land of freedom for all people. 87 years later, in his Gettysburg Address in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln noted, "47 years ago our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal." 87 years after the signing, an American president is still referring to the Declaration of Independence as the most important and influential of all the founding documents. In his speech, Abraham Lincoln refers to the section of the Declaration of Independence which references our Creator God, the God of the Bible, and as President Lincoln sought to end the evil of slavery, he quoted the Declaration of Independence, "All men are created equal." These words of the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence are undoubtedly the most famous, most memorized, and most often quoted from this document. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It could just as easily have been written, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are equal by nature, and by this natural order they have certain inalienable rights." But rather than an atheistic or secular declaration, this founding document referenced God and Creator several times, most famously in this second paragraph. It is also a little discussed but well-documented fact of history that many members of that Continental Congress, who were the framers and signers of the Declaration of Independence, worshipped together when they were in session at the Christ Church in Philadelphia, under the pastor, Reverend Jacob Duché. Duché had preached many times about the freedom that all men have in Jesus Christ, and how this freedom extended to peoples of a nation, and that government should only receive its power from the governed themselves. Our founding fathers were deeply moved by these sermons. Reverend Duché would be appointed as the first official chaplain of the United States Congress. Our nation's independence was partly birthed then, of all places, in church, under the preaching of the gospel, with the ideal that there was a Creator God, and that we know about Him from the Bible, and we know that we have from Him certain inalienable rights. Among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And from these words, and from these truths, the United States of America was beginning its birth, in church, on the Lord's Day.